Hi, I'm going to teach you the laptop motherboard parts and components. So we're gonna see many motherboards in order to go deeper into understanding the laptop motherboard parts and components. So the first part is the processor, as you can see. Here, this is the screw that we can use to open or close the processor. This is the open side and here close side. You can just turn this screw to open the processor. So this is the processor. This is the GMCH or the North Bridge. Here we have the graphic card. This is NVIDIA graphic card, as you can see. This is the ICH or the South Bridge. Okay. Here we have the Super I/O. Here we have the RAM or random access memory. You can remove it easily, as you can see. So there is many types of random access memory. There is a DDR1, DDR2, 3, 4, etc. And for every RAM has a specific working voltage. For example, for this kind of RAM, 1.8 volt. This is a DDR2 RAM with 1.8 volt working principle. Of course, for other RAMs, for example, DDR1 is 2.5 volt, DDR2 1.8 volt, DDR3 1.5 volt, DDR4 1.2 volt, and DDR5 1.1 volt. So for every kind or type of RAM, it has a specific working voltage. So here, as you can see, this is capacitors, inductor, as you can see, two inductors, two channels for the processor. Here also we have inductor, capacitor. Here another capacitor. This is another capacitor. Here we have MOSFETs. This is IC. This is another IC. Here we have an oscillator. Here, as you can see, we have two channel, two inductors. This is two channel for the processor. Okay. This is the power channel for the processor to give the VCC core for the processor. This is MOSFETs, ceramic capacitors. This is oscillator IC that gives the clock or the frequency to the whole motherboard. This is the crystal. As you can see, Y2, always crystal has a Y2 reference or X. This is MOSFETs, as you can see, 8-pin MOSFETs. Those are ICs. Okay. Over here we have other ICs, as you can see, with 6 pins and 5 pins. This is the CMOS battery, as you can see, the CMOS battery with 2.4 volt. So here we're going to see another motherboard. So this is the processor. Here we have the GMCH or the North Bridge, as you can see, with the graphic card. So the graphic card is integrated with this GMCH, and here we have the ICH, as you can see. This is the Super I/O. This is the BIOS, basic input-output system, with 8 pin. This is an 8-pin BIOS. This is the RAM, the random access memory. This is a DDR2 RAM. Those are ICs, power management ICs. So the charge IC and the 3 volt, 5 volt IC. This is the power jack. Here we have the protection component. This is a current sense resistor. Over here we have the oscillator, as you can see, for the frequency. This is the crystal, as you can see. For the crystal, you can find its reference X or Y. So for this crystal, we have X, as you can see, X2. So this IC is the audio controller IC that controls the audio. This is regulators or power converter ICs. All those are capacitors. This is a chemical capacitors. Here we have ceramic capacitors, as you can see. So let's see another motherboard. So in this motherboard, this is an improved and an enhanced motherboard. So the processor, the GMCH, and the graphic card are integrated in one chip, as you can see. So this one chip contains the processor, the GMCH or North Bridge, and the graphic card. And over here we have the ICH. Okay, this is a RAM, the random access memory. This type of RAM is a DDR3. Okay, so this is the Super I/O. As you can see, I will show you these components in mini motherboards in order to go deeper into understanding motherboards. Okay, so here, as you can see, this is the charge IC near to the battery connector, as you can see. Okay, here this is the power jack connector, as you can see. Here this is the power jack connected to the cable, as you can see. Here we have two red wires, hold 19 volt, and two black wires for the ground. So this is the processor, as you can see. Here we have two channel or two inductor, as you can see, two inductor. Here this is chemical capacitors, with plus and minus. So this is a CMOS battery socket, a 3 volt CMOS battery. This is the BIOS, as you can see, with 8 pins. This is the first pin, the second, third, fourth, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Always the pin number 8 hold 3 volt, 3.3 volt. So those are connectors or ports, the motherboard ports. This is ICs, as you can see. This IC, this is the control, the audio control for these ports, as you can see. This is the speaker and the audio control. Okay, if you have any problem with the audio, you should check that IC. So in the back side of the motherboard, this is the back of the processor, a lot of chemical capacitors, as you can see, and here I have MOSFETs, two MOSFETs here and two MOSFETs also here, as you can see. We have here other type of MOSFET. Those also are MOSFETs in this shape. Here we have the power battery or the connector, the battery connector. This is the current sense resistor. This is the coil. This is inductor, not capacitor. And those are MOSFETs and ceramic capacitors. So here this is the diodes, as you can see. This is diodes. We have the connector, MOSFET, inductor, MOSFETs, chemical capacitors. We have here MOSFETs, as you can see, inductor, another capacitor, MOSFET, and current sense resistor, as you can see. And here we have ceramic capacitors. This is the Wi-Fi or wireless card connector. This is the BIOS chip. And this is the MOSFET. You see the difference between the BIOS and the MOSFET? Always the BIOS chip is bigger than the MOSFET. As I told you before, we're going to see many motherboards in order to understand deeply. So this is another motherboard, as you can see. So this is Acer motherboard, as you can see. So always we have the processor, as you can see. This is the processor. Here we have the GMCH or the NOT bridge. Okay. This is the random access memories. Over here we have the power channels for the processor, two inductors or coils, and here 4 MOSFETs, 2, and in for both channels. Let's see the other side. Normally we will find other MOSFETs and chemical capacitor. As you can see, we have 2 MOSFETs with 2 chemical capacitor, 2 MOSFETs with 2 chemical capacitor. So this processor has 2 channels. This is the ICH, Intel ICH. Here we have the Crystal X1, as you can see. So this is the CMOS battery. Here we have MOSFETs, 8-pin MOSFETs. This is the SIO or Super Input Output Crystal. BIOS, as you can see. Always the BIOS is bigger than the MOSFET. This is the charge IC because it is near to the power or to the battery connector, the charge IC. Here we have some transistors, 3-pin transistors, as you can see. Also here we have transistors. The reference for the transistors is Q. This is the audio control, as you can see. As you can see here we have the audio ports. Okay. If you have any problem with the audio ports or audio in general, you should check this IC. Maybe the IC is bad. If the IC is bad, you should replace it with another AC with the same reference. Here, as you can see, this is the power jack. Here, the power jack connector, 2 red wires and 2 black wires. This is MOSFETs or switches. Okay, here we have diode protection component. Here we have power connector. Basically, this is the input. Okay, the power for the motherboard, it passes through this inductor or this electromagnetic interference. Okay, here we have another inductor. So usually the inductor in laptops has just 2 terminals. Okay, so this is diode. Here we have PD means diode. This is diode. Basically, you can find diodes with 2 terminals or 3 terminals. This is the SIO or the super IO or super input output, as you can see. Okay, always near to the SIO you will find a crystal oscillator, as you can see, with 4 terminals. Here, this is the ICH or the circuit bridge. Here we have Y3. Okay, always Y or X is the reference designator for the crystal oscillator. Okay, Y or X. As you can see here, we have another crystal oscillator. We have Y2, as you can see, next to the frequency generator. Okay, this IC is the responsible to generate the timing or the clock for the whole motherboard or the whole circuit in the motherboard. So without this IC, the motherboard will not working properly. This IC synchronizes the working of the all circuits in the motherboard. Basically, this is the pin number 1. Here we have this point. This dot means the pin number 1. So here we have another crystal oscillator. As you can see, we have Y5. Okay, next to this IC. Here we have a fuse. As you can see, we have F5. This is a fuse. Okay, this is a fuse. Basically, if you want to check the serviceability of this fuse, you can just use the multimeter. You can put the multimeter to the buzzer option, as you can see here, and then check the fuse with the multimeter probes. If you hear a buzzer, means the fuse is good. If you don't hear any buzzer or you don't get any continuity or low resistance, means the fuse is bad. Here basically this is the BIOS. As you can see here we have the BIOS. Okay, there is many types of BIOS. This is one type of BIOS, as you can see here, with many pins or terminals in both sides. You will find above the BIOS always a paint, as you can see, a white paint or any color of paint. Okay, so this is one type of BIOS. I'm going to show you another type of BIOS with 8 pins. As you can see here, this is 8 pin diode. We have, as you can see, this color here. Okay, so usually the BIOS, you will find it near to the ICH or to the SIO. Okay, so this kind of BIOS is used in many motherboards. This is the most used BIOS, 8-pin BIOS. So here we have U13. Basically, this is an IC. Here we have another fuse. We have F means fuse, F7. Here we have U10. This is 2 ICs. U refer to IC, okay? And Q for the MOSFET. So this is the CMOS battery, as you can see, with 2.4 volt. As you can see, this is basically the CMOS battery. It has just 2 cables, a high and a low voltage. Here we have other ICs. Here we have PQ, means this is MOSFET. Okay, and here this is a power management IC. Here we have 2 inductors. As you can see, we have PL, always L or PL is for inductor. Here we have a ceramic capacitor or a PF capacitor. Okay, so we can use the multimeter to check to know the difference between inductor and ceramic capacitor. You should always differentiate between inductor and ceramic capacitor. So if you check the ceramic capacitor, you should not get a short or a buzzer in the multimeter. You should not get a low resistance in the multimeter. But for inductor, exactly like a fuse. If you check it using the multimeter, you should get a low resistance, or you should hear a buzzer. As you can see in the multimeter, we have about 0 ohms low resistance. Means these inductors are good. Okay. So here we have a very important IC. This is basically audio control IC. It controls these ports, as you can see, and controls also the speakers. Okay. So this is audio control IC. Here we have other ICs. This is USB controllers. These ICs control this USB port. If you find any failed port, you should check these ICs. If the port is good, is not damaged, then maybe the problem is in this IC near to the USB port. Okay, so this is these ICs, these two ICs, and here this is the VGA or video graphic. This is the VGA that we use to connect the screen or the monitor to the laptop. Here, this is the VGA controller IC, as you can see. This is the VGA basically that we use to connect the screen to the laptop. If you have a problem with the VGA, maybe the IC is failed. This is the BIOS. So as I told you before, always or usually the BIOS is near to the ICH and to the Super I/O. Okay, as you can see. Here we have crystal oscillators, as we have seen before. So you can find the reference designator of crystal oscillator is Y or X. This is a CMOS battery, another CMOS battery in another motherboard. Here we have a chemical or a polarized capacitor. Okay, this is polarized capacitor. Here we have inductors. As you can see, this is inductors. Here we have chemical capacitors. So I will show you the laptop component in many motherboards in order to go deeper into understanding the basics of laptop motherboard components.